Greetings. Thank you all for joining us on this lovely afternoon. This is our 9th in the sessions of Conversations on Online Learning. And it's a series that I know some of you have attended before. And it's a conversation that we've been trying to have around issues around online learning and the academy. And one of the things that we want to do is have as much as possible be a conversation. We have for an opportunity for anybody in the audience to also be part of that conversation using the the Twitter handles that I have on the screen up there. Please send us some questions, tweet about the conference, etc. The Conversations on Online series has really been a forum to generate ideas, learn about practices, again, so that it helps us find the answers to some really tough problems around online learning. What will be the expectations of students who arrive, having grown up on Khan Academy, when they arrive on campus? How do we adopt some of the gains that are happening in online learning for some of our on-campus courses? The faculty development programs that are effective and how to make sure that many schools take advantage of those. And then how do we make sure that we have enough funding to deal with the increased production costs of some of these courses, and many, many more questions. Again, all of these sessions are, like this one, are recorded and are available on CCNMTL's YouTube site. Today, we're going to talk about Brian Greene's World Science U. World Science U is where, from their site, you can explore the wonders of science guided by leading researchers and educators. And who better to talk to about the World Science U than Brian Greene himself? Brian Greene is a professor of math and physics at Columbia University. He's also a best-selling science author, TV personality, and co-founder of the World Science Festival. Joining me today, I'm very grateful to have Claudia Dreifus, journalist, educator, joining the conversation. At SIPA, Claudia teaches a course on feature writing in international affairs, and she also teaches at the Earth Institute on science writing. She also writes the Conversations With feature at the New York Times Science section. She is Senior Fellow at the World Policy Institute and is the co-author with Andrew Hackett of a book called Higher Education, with a question mark, how colleges are wasting our money and failing our kids, and what can we do about it? So what we're going to do today is we're going to show a short promo of the World Science U, just so that everybody's aware of the World Science U program. We'll have a conversation for about 45 minutes. At that point, we'll take some questions from the audience, and through the Twitter hashtag #AskBrianGreene, my colleagues here will be handing me some of those questions at that time. So without further ado, we're going to show the video, and Alex will cue that up.
Welcome to World Science U. Online education has enormous potential to use the internet to create a new kind of educational experience. Not just putting a camera in the classroom and hitting record, offering the same kind of lectures that we teachers have been given for centuries, but creating something different, something that leverages the amazing power of this online world. Here's an example. In 1905, Albert Einstein discovered special relativity, transforming our understanding of space and time. Ever since, generations of students have struggled to grasp Einstein's vision. I was one of those students. As a college freshman, I worked hard to understand Einstein's perspective, and I got it, sort of. I did well in the course, but I didn't fully understand what it all really meant. You see, I needed some way to turn the abstract math into vibrant mental images. I needed something that I could grasp and hold and play with to make these difficult ideas tangible. I needed immediate feedback on practice problems so I could correct things that I thought I understood, but I actually didn't. And frankly, what I really needed was an endlessly patient guide to be with me and answer the dozens of questions that were always swirling around in my mind. Well, that's the approach of World Science U. We're creating the world's best online courses focused exclusively on science. Courses that are rigorous, but filled with carefully crafted animations that make the abstract visual, filled with interactive demonstrations that take difficult concepts and make them intuitive, problems and exercises, all with full video solutions, together with a visual archive of quick answers to a wide range of questions asked by deeply curious people like you. We're not trying to replicate the traditional classroom, but instead take the best parts of that classroom and push them toward the future. The idea is simple but profound. Learn science from the world's top educators by tapping the power of the digital realm to create a new kind of science education. It's for the novice, for the enthusiast, for everyone. World Science U, the next phase in digital education.
Well, let's start. Brian, I know you're a busy guy, because I know how hard it is to get in touch with you. What motivated you to get started on a program like the World Science U?
Well, actually, we started thinking about this, I'd say, way back in the mid-1990s. So this was a project long in gestation. And it really, for me, began when I moved to Columbia from Cornell, where I was initially a faculty member there, and Columbia asked me to come, and I can never sever ties in every aspect of my life. So I couldn't really do it there either, and I wanted to continue to teach the students that I had at Cornell. So back then, it was really awkward technology, but we set up a video conferencing system, and I was teaching those students. It was so awkward that it was clear that it was too early, but then as the technology got better and better, we recognized that time was right to try to use the same philosophy that we've had in other domains, like the World Science Festival, where you can have people really bringing big, deep ideas out there, but in a way that is more effective than the traditional delivery approaches that we have in the traditional classroom. So that prompted us to go forward.
Okay.
Well, Brian, the genius of the World Science Festival, which you just mentioned, is that it is produced, it is interesting. The professors who speak are told to keep their comments short, and they are sort of screen tested, and you put on a very good program. You've managed to make science interesting and accessible. Are you trying to do something similar here?
Yeah, it's the same exact philosophy. And again, for World Science Festival, it really is, as you know, Tracy Day, who's the co-founder, who my wife, that's sort of a secondary fact. Which,
does it help to have a producer in the family?
In some ways it does, but in some ways it can be pretty damn irritating. But no, she's fantastic, and she is the one who really is behind, you know, that kind of production quality. But yeah, World Science U is the same philosophy of the World Science Festival. Really take these ideas, highly produced, not bells and whistles that are irrelevant, but ways in which you can get the ideas better than in any other manner of communication that is usually used.
You know, a lot of professors complain when they talk about teaching. I am not a performer, they say. Do you think maybe most professors should be a little more performers?
Well, I think it really depends on who they are. I think trying to stick yourself into a way of being that's not aligned with your own DNA is the worst of all possible choices. But I think if professors recognize that if they're going to be standing up there 60 minutes, 90 minutes or longer, yeah, it better be something about what they're doing that is compelling in the performance domain, if at all possible. I mean, how do you hold on to an undergraduate's or grad student's attention for that period of time if it doesn't have some compelling quality?
So in your video introduction to World Science U, and I really suggest that people look at the website because it's really well done and it's beautiful. In your introduction, you mentioned that as an undergraduate, you had your own problems with getting Einstein down.
Still do.
Well, this is fascinating and astonishing. What was the nature of this problem, and do you think the technology that you've developed makes it possible, easier for kids to grab onto it now?
I think so. I mean, the basic problem with Einstein and a lot of modern physics is that it's counterintuitive. So yes, you can learn to do the equations, you can learn to undertake the calculations, but do you really feel it in your bones? That, to me, is when you really understand something. And certainly, as an undergraduate, I don't think I felt Einstein's ideas in my bones. And even today, I don't know if I fully feel it in my bones, certainly more than I did 30 years ago. But if you learn a subject, and it's not just the math, but you can actually see the visuals, right? So Einstein's ideas talk about time slowing down when you move, or space compressing, and E equals mc squared, all these wondrous ideas. If it's just the equations, that's one level of understanding. If you can see it visually, then it's a deeper level of understanding. If you can have some kind of interactive demonstration where the math becomes visceral, because you're changing parameters, the speed of the rocket ship, and you can see the effect on time by that change, these are the roots into gaining an intuition, and that's what it's about.
And that's where a lot of the production work that's going into the site is, as you go through the site, you see how many of these widgets you built. Is
Yes.
something that...
That's the hard work, I agree. So we have over 200 animations in this pilot course, something like 65 interactive demonstrations. So yes, each one of those is an effort to produce, and if you're just doing it for 30 kids in a classroom, it's pretty hard to find the rationale for that level of investment of time, energy, money. But if you're reaching a wider audience, then yeah, all of a sudden it starts to make sense.
Well, the technology on your site is gorgeous, and it's incredibly well done, and it's functional. I mean, I was routing through it all day yesterday, and it works. Did you feel tempted last winter when there were all these problems with the Obamacare website to send the president the name of your web designer?
No, the only thing I felt like sending him was, man, I feel your pain, right? Right, because in building a new website, that is sort of par for the course. Now, the key thing is to know when to go public, right? And we delayed going public a number of times, because we didn't want that to happen. So it is so hard to get everything right. And you know, we've had our little problems here and there. Luckily, nothing on par with the issues that arose in the government. But yeah, it's tough.
And as it gets more complicated, you have to do more of that quality checking.
Yes, you know, I did a lot of the quality control on content issues. Is it the right video solution to that problem? I mean, you've got so we have hundreds of problems, all with video solutions, right? Right? Count the permutations that could happen, especially when the people who are responsible for uploading the content don't really fully understand it, right? Because you can't have experts in relativity be the ones that are, say, working on the back end of a website. So there's that, and then there was the quality control on the functionality. So it's as anyone who's built a website, you only feel sympathy when a website doesn't work.
Now, there exists right now a very popular open source MOOC, the Khan Academy. Although they don't quite consider themselves MOOCs, they consider themselves more tutorials.
Yes.
So how are you going to be different than the Khan Academy, and how are you going to be different from the actual MOOCs that Harvard and MIT offer?
Well, there are ways in which we are similar, for sure. It's all about providing education in a digital domain. So there's where our similarities exist. But where we differ is that we don't consider the role of the internet to be a delivery vehicle for old-style teaching, right? I mean, I've been standing in front of a blackboard for all of my career in teaching, and our forebears have been doing that for 500 years. So why, when we have this new technology, should we film somebody in front of a blackboard, right? It seems like that seems to me as ridiculous as when film first came on and we wanted to adapt a book for film, we'd like film the pages of the book, right? And you turn them, okay, now we got the book up on the screen, right? A new way of communicating deserves exploitation in the best sense of the word. So that was our goal here, to not just, you know, scribble on a pad, which is fine, but which Khan Academy does. Not just put a camera and capture the lecture and try our best to make the online version like the classroom that we've been using for 500 years. No, why don't we try to do something that leverages the space itself?
Well, I've interviewed Sal Khan, and he doesn't feel he's doing a course. He feels
Yes,
he's supplemental to a course.
Yeah.
You are doing an actual course.
That's right. That's a difference there too. So
Yeah.
what I was referring to is more difference between some of the traditional MOOCs that are out there by various providers and what we're doing. But yes, Sal is providing more individual lessons or tutorials.
And my overseas students have used the Khan Academy to brush up on their skills.
No, it's great. And I mean, full disclosure, I mean, Sal called me and asked me if I would do the physics part of Khan Academy. And I thought about it, but I do feel that people learn physics and everything else better if there's a person who's taking you through, that you feel is holding you by the hand and taking you through these difficult abstract concepts, as opposed to kind of a disembodied voice that's scrawling on the tablet. So it was really just the level of what kind of investment in the production quality was relevant or was part of the philosophy of a given approach. And his stuff works for many, many people, so it's great.
So let me play devil's advocate a bit about MOOCs. MIT and Harvard have extremely popular MOOCs that have hundreds of thousands of people who tune in. And a lot of people in education say, this is the future. Look at the scale and look how cheap it is. And it's not cheap, actually, as Maurice can tell you. But some critics say that the proponents of MOOCs are exaggerating its educational impact. Yes, the numbers are huge, but the numbers who finish are fractional, less than, it's in the one figures.
Yes.
Perhaps one reason that few continue is that it's a little like auditing a course.
Yes.
You don't have to buy in.
I agree completely. And I think the large numbers are a good sign for humanity, right? That means so many people aspire to learn stuff. And there's this opportunity presented, and they say, yeah, that looks great, I want to learn that. And then life intrudes, and you have to do everything else that you ordinarily do, and it becomes secondary or third on the priority list, and it drops away. So I don't think it's surprising that a large number will sign up and a much smaller number will complete. But I think when MOOCs will really come into their own, I don't even like the name MOOC.
No,
right?
It sounds like
Well, the word itself is,
ugly.
pretty ugly, right? It doesn't have any, but that's not why I don't like it. Because the M stands for massive. And I don't think massive should be the primary descriptor for this kind of education. It should be quality. It should be innovation. And if many people make use of it, yay, that's great. But for the point of it to be the M, I just think is completely off base. It's going exactly the wrong direction. So yes, it should be high quality education that can be used in the classroom and can be used on your own. Look, here at Columbia, I am teaching my course in special relativity using the online materials. So my students are seeing all of the lectures online, they're doing all of the problems online, and then they come in and we have discussions about the material. And at the first meeting, when I told them that we were going to do this, a kid raised his hand in the back and said, so if we're doing all that stuff online, what are we going to do in the classroom? And I said to him, I don't know.
Yeah.
I really didn't know. And the very first lecture, the first meeting I should say, the next week, I prepared a lot of stuff because I didn't know, like, if we were going to look at our shoes, like, what are we going to do now? They came in with such energy. They came in with such great questions because they'd had time to digest the material. It's very hard for a student to ask a deep question if they're listening to you and they haven't learned the material before. They're trying to take notes, they're trying to process it, they're trying to think it through, and then trying to come up with something that is, a good question. It's hard. This is a much better way. So I feel like I'm a better teacher in the classroom. Forget about the M of MOOC. I'm a better teacher in the classroom by virtue of having these materials. And colleagues of mine have used this in their classes, and the students have gotten a lot out of it there too. So that, to me, is the first stage of judging if these things are progress in the educational space.
You talked a little bit about some of your platform helps you with some of that, tracking your students, helping see what's happening in your class.
Yeah, that's true too.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah, in the past, I've been, I think like many faculty members, somewhat hands-off in the sense of not watching an individual student's progress day by day, right? I mean, what kind of assessment do you have? People turn in a problem set. Grades, you can look at the grades, get a sense of who's behind, who's staying with it. But now, I can go online and I can literally see how Timmy's doing, right? So I teach my class Tuesday, 3 o'clock. I see Timmy's not watched the videos for this coming. I write Timmy, it looks like you haven't quite watched all the videos yet. 5 seconds later, I'm sorry, Professor Greene, and then I watch Timmy going through the videos, right? So it's not like Big Brother, I guess it is,
Yes,
sort of, but it's a level of involvement that I think is very good for the students, and it's hard to do that any other way.
Well, it's interesting. There are a group of educational reformers in physics who have been trying to teach physics differently. And what they use is this clicker system where they can follow a large class and they give them exams every, half hour, little quizzes, and then they can see how many people are failing and what sectors of the room are failing, and then they know not to go on to the next topic. Right. And in essence, you're doing the same thing.
In a way, yeah. So you're talking about Carl Weinman.
I'm talking exactly about Carl Weinman.
And I think that is an interesting approach. What I think I prefer about this is it gives students the ability to do it at home, at their own time, at their own speed. So in our class, we do problems as well. But I'm not assessing them there. I'm trying to get them to think through, find the problems, work as a group, come to a consensus, all that good stuff. And then they go home, and then they're on their own. They can sit back, have the tea or coffee, and do the problem as best they can in that environment. And I think that's a better way of assessing if they've gotten it.
Well, I think what Carl is trying to do is not go too fast. And he gauges his lectures based on what they're doing.
Again, I think that's a good thing. And look, Carl's fantastic. And ultimately, that may be the best approach. I don't know. But the way I don't go too fast is, well, I do the lecture at a speed that feels good to me, and then the student, they can go back because they're like watching the lecture, and my students do that. And there's some students who say, I had to watch that a few times, great. Others who say, you know what, Professor Greene, in that section, I don't want to make you feel bad, but you were talking a little bit slow, so I went to double speed on the video. Fine, that's all fine, right? So they can completely choose the speed at which they want to take in the idea.
So let me, please, Maurice.
For example, you also have that process of having pre-canned questions that you answer. Do you use that as a way of doing that kind of polling where you can see, well, if 20 of my students went to that same question, is that something that I may need to come back to? Yeah,
in principle, the answer to that is yes. In practice, I wasn't doing that because there isn't enough data. I wanted students to go through every single thing, so that was part of what the requirement of the course is. But out in the open world, the idea in our phase 2 is absolutely to even have a place in the middle of a video for a student to like click a little thing that says, I'm kind of losing it here. And if we get a lot of losing it over here, then we'll add some supplementary material at that point to fill in.
Let me explain what we're actually talking about here. Brian has these sort of like electronic flashcards on his site with little terms that you can look up, like string theory, and then the card tells you what it is, or general relativity, or stuff one might not know, which one ought to know to go on with the program. And you can tutor yourself. It's fantastic, and it's fun. But I wanted to ask, okay, here at Columbia, you're doing kind of mixed teaching, and the students are getting Brian Greene. But what about all those schools that intend to use MOOCs, perhaps yours, instead of face-to-face teachers? How good is that?
The data ultimately will show, but the experiments that we've done so far is one issue that I wanted to know is, does it matter if it's the same person teaching the online material as the one that you have live in the classroom? And that seems to not matter very much. So I had a couple of colleagues of mine do what I do here with their class at Duke or at Santa Barbara or at University of Mass, Dartmouth. We have a variety of schools around the country. And the way in which the students have performed is virtually indistinguishable from how the Columbia students have performed. And I had no live interaction with those students at all. They did have a live person there, the faculty on site. So I think that's a good piece of data. In terms of folks that are out there completely separate from any human contact, well, there's a couple things there too. I've started to do live sessions online where, much as you are going to be accumulating questions, I guess, from a Twitter feed, but previously this isn't being live streamed. Mine is live streamed, and we get real-time questions coming in from all over the world. Now, of course, I can only answer a fraction of those that come in, but at least the students sitting out there in Islamabad or whatever can feel that there is this live person that is there, so it isn't fully canned in the digital space.
Well, let me ask on that, to again play devil's advocate. When I interviewed Sal Khan, I asked him about these philosophy professors at San Jose State who got out a petition when a MOOC made at Harvard of Michael Sandel's ethics class was to be the focus of their philosophy program. And they said, thanks, but no thanks, we'll teach our own students. And I asked Sal Khan what he thought of that, and he thought the philosophy professors were absolutely right. They did not need to watch Harvard students interacting with Michael Sandel. They needed, he said, to interact with their own professors. What do you think?
I don't think there's a uniform answer. I think there are certain circumstances where that is the optimum, the traditional approach where you have students interacting with faculty. But there are other places in the world that don't have that access. And being able to provide this as opposed to nothing, I think is a dramatic step forward. And I guess my view in terms of how this material, say World Science U or any of the other online courses that have been created, I don't consider them as taking the place of a traditional classroom, but I do consider them as taking the place of a traditional textbook. So, you know, I've never actually written a textbook, but I've certainly used textbooks in my classes that were written by other people, not Michael Sandel, simply because I don't teach that sort of stuff. But I do use textbooks written by, like, David Griffiths, you know, a professor who has nothing to do with Columbia and I've never even met. And I use a lot of his textbooks. Somebody else could say, let's use Brian Greene's digital textbook as our material. And that, to me, is completely parallel.
So going back, you said you did the experiment with Duke and Santa Barbara and a few others. That was last fall, or was that
last fall? And also this spring, we have others doing it too.
I think that experiment is, you know, really interesting. And again, if I understand it correctly, those students watched your videos but had their own physics class.
Yes, so it was a textbook. Literally what I'm saying was how this material was used at those classes.
Can you comment on so far on the results that you've gotten, other than the fact that they were pretty even?
Well, quite literally, so we decided to do a uniform final exam.
Oh, you did?
Columbia, Duke, and UCSB, they all took the same final exam. And the scores, the average scores, were within a point or two of each other at each place.
Okay.
Well, math and science, in general, there's a right and wrong answer.
That's
more than, let's say, philosophy. Or there's an answer until it's proven to be not right.
Not relevant, usually. Not that it's, if you do the calculations, it's a right answer, but not a relevant one if the universe doesn't make use of it.
Or if it gets disproven. In terms of science.
Yes, absolutely.
So, for instance, ulcers are not caused by aggravation, they're caused by bacteria.
Right.
It got disproven. There are right and wrong answers in these subjects, so it's easier to test for them and it's easier to teach for them. But philosophy is a little squishy by nature.
Yes.
Maybe it's less suited for a MOOC.
Yes, so that's why this is called World Science U, as opposed to World Philosophy U or World History U. Or and it's not that we can't do that. In fact, there is interest because, as you know, Tracy is not a scientist by training, so she does come from these other areas. But certainly, science is, I think, the optimum place for this kind of material for exactly the reason you're saying. You know, we've got hundreds of problems and exercises. We don't need any peer-to-peer grading. There's an answer. You got it or you don't. There's no judgment call, and that's what makes it very clear from the assessment side.
What about to not go there too much, but my experience as a teacher is that the face-to-face is the life difference, the inspiration. You don't reach everybody, but the one or two people you really reach, you change lives. How's that going to happen on videotape?
It largely won't, or it won't happen in the same way. So it's absolutely the case that if every single student could have, say, a one-on-one with a faculty member who took them right through the curriculum, that would be better. I think that would be a real good thing. It's not practical, it's never going to happen. If a student is going to have no access to high-quality education because of, say, where they are, or because of constraints on where they need to work in order to make a living, all that sort of stuff, and now they can log on and have high-quality education they wouldn't have access to before, I don't see how one can't think of that as a major step forward. But will it replicate the kind of experience that you're talking about? Probably not. However, I can well imagine that as these materials get better and better, and as they become, the verisimilitude to having a real person becomes ever greater. I don't know what it's going to be in 10 years. You put on your holographic visor or something, and the person, there will be a sense of a person who is with you. It may not be the same as the true human being in the classroom, but there are aspects of that relationship that I have no doubt will have a profound impact on the education of students.
So do we have 5 minutes to ask Brian about working with your wife? How does that work?
How does it work working with my wife? I don't think we have time to talk about it. Thank you for asking.
Yeah.
I really appreciate the interest. No, it's actually a wonderful thing,
Yeah.
and it didn't have to be that way, right? I mean, when we got together, the plan was not to work together, and then when the World Science Festival sort of came around, in some, I don't mean this to come across the wrong way, but I had no idea if she was any good, right? I never worked.
Been a producer for CBS.
She'd been a producer and had done good work, but how is she as a colleague? I had no idea, and I'm sure she could say the same thing about me. Although, I'm obviously kind of a nice guy, and she's spectacular. She's like the best person I've ever worked with in my life. And that is thankful, because let's say she wasn't. Then what do I do? I'm married to her. But so it's great. The downside is our house is like 24-hour work.
Can you talk about the extent of that production, the scale of the production that you've had to do for World Science U, the number of people involved, obviously your wife, you, and
Yeah, well, World Science U is a fairly lean team because we view this as a pilot project, so we didn't want to build a whole architecture for something that was kind of an experiment for us. But it's a subset of the World Science Festival team, which, so Tracy is the CEO, co-founder, and we have about 25 full-time people in the World Science Festival now. And as the festival comes around, which it's actually coming up, May 28th to June 1st, we have like 50 people, 60 people who are now part of the organization to pull off the festival. World Science U was me, it was Tracy, it was a team of animators, 2 to 3 spectacularly good animators who are also the editors of the program, and then also a crew. And we did the filming very efficiently. So we did the whole filming of all the lectures in one 5-day period, which was, I'll never do it that way again, but it got it done, and it got it done cheaply.
And you have 2 other courses that are about to be released.
Yeah, so we have a couple other courses in the works, and we also are doing something at the World Science Festival associated with World Science U. We're having World Science U for a day, where it will be a day of interactions with 6 faculty, and some of those are the ones who are going to be doing the other courses going forward, so that it's a person, lifelong learner, science enthusiast, will come in at 8:30 in the morning and leave at 6 at night, having gone through a really intense discussion of particle physics and cosmology and mathematics and all sorts of stuff like that. So the organizations are deeply intertwined, and in fact, they're coming together at the festival in that way.
So who funded these 25 people that,
So World Science Festival is funded by a handful of generous benefactors. The Simons Foundation was one of the initial funders, Sloan Foundation, the John Templeton Foundation, a variety of corporate sponsors, individuals, generous philanthropists like Ann Ziff and others.
and the MOOC?
And the funding for the World Science U was World Science Festival. So this aligns with the World Science Festival mission. So we brought it to the board and said, we've been, for the most part, doing science for the public in a kind of inspirational way, get people excited, interested. We're always asked, even by the funders, okay, so let's say you succeed and someone loves relativity from your program, what do they do next? And we're like, well, they'll read Science Times, or they'll watch a NOVA program, or they'll get a subscription to Scientific American. But now we can say, well, maybe they'll dig in deeper right here. So this is a natural outgrowth of the mission, so it was sensible for World Science Festival to fund the SEED project.
Can you talk a little bit about, one of the things that I keep, when we had the conversation with some of our staff, is the changes you've gone through as a professor. You alluded to them before, being kind of that helicopter professor.
Yeah.
Which maybe could be a new term. But also, you talked about the change in the way you think about your teaching, and how this may in fact, some of the online learning experiments also change the way other faculty think about their teaching.
Yeah, it changes it in a very significant way, especially if you're in a field like mine. It may not be the case for philosophy and sociology or other areas as much, but everything that I want to teach students about usually has some significant diagram, illustration, visual component. And the only thing that I could ever do for the past 20 years of teaching was try to sketch it out with a piece of chalk, and it was always awful. I never knew if it was really communicating any information. Sometimes I would come crawling to you, as you know, over the years and say, Maurice, please, I need this one visual for this class, right? And we try to get it done, sometimes farming it out to India, as I recall, at times, for some of the difficult animations. So we'd work hard, sometimes for weeks, for this one visual. Now, the idea is if you put the effort in to do the course right once and have sort of a definitive version, you've got a library of those things. That changes everything in the sense of pedagogy.
As you look at the next steps, as you bring new faculty on board, one of the things that has come up for the MOOC providers is the issue of credentials. Are you looking to partner with other universities, Columbia, other ways of how people then take the fact that they've made it through your university course on relativity, maybe the 3 others? What would be their takeaway from that effort that would allow them to maybe move into an AP program or something like that that gives them some of that credit?
Yes, so at the moment, that's of course a hot button issue, because that is the commodity that universities sell. That's their value. So how will that interface with this kind of an undertaking is, I think, something that many people on both sides are struggling with. Obviously, it should be the case that if someone goes through these materials and does well on the final exam, and you know that they did the work, and that can be done through testing centers, they've done as much as the students that I've been teaching this term who are getting credit for that. So they have done the right amount, and they've achieved enough to be eligible, in my mind, for the credit. Will we provide that credit? That's a completely different issue. It's not an education issue, it's a business issue.
Here's a question on that. One of the things one hears in the educational community is people kind of overclaiming about the MOOCs. They are going to change everything. They are going to replace teaching. They are going to deal with the high cost of education, they say. Does that sometimes trouble you?
Well, I think hype, overselling, hyperbole, it bothers me across the board, not just in this space. It bothers me when I hear string theorists saying that about string theory in the old days. It bothers me when I hear it about some discovery and it's hyped in some way that's unnecessary. I hate hype, period, end of story. And yes, here, I don't think anybody really knows the long-term impact of what's happening here. I can't help but feel that it will have a significant effect on what we're doing in the education space. What that will be, I don't think anybody can really predict. But all I know is it makes me a better teacher, and I wasn't bad before. And I think that's a good data point.
Well, on that note, maybe we turn over to the audience and see if any of you have some questions. And we'll also be taking some of your questions through Twitter.
It's on? Okay.
Could you identify yourself?
So I'm Matt Mercury. I'm a fellow here in the Department of Medicine, and I actually have a lot of experience in Canada developing graduate-level online courses. And we had an interesting experiment with no outcomes, and you'll see where I'm going with this, where we had students who were physicians living overseas. They wanted to learn material that isn't very easily accessible to them, especially with their busy clinics, so we developed this program. But we also forced some students into the course as well, who were local, because we didn't want to run two courses, one locally and one online. And one of the things we notice is that there's very different motivations as to why people will come to a university to take a course versus take a course online. And in terms of the outcomes, I mean, everyone did well on the exam because ultimately everybody there is motivated to do well. But really, the question I have for you though is about the issue of outcomes, right? When you look at education interventions, any education intervention versus no education intervention usually has an effect size of about 1, right? People learn, right? But when you pit one education intervention versus another, you really don't see much of a difference. And so really what this comes down to is this is what we're doing when you talk about the visuals and such, it's about improving learning, right? But are you aware of any literature out there that really speaks to, or have you had any experience where students are actually now getting the material better than they did before?
Right, so that's a real good question, and it's one that's forefront in my mind. I want to know whether the effort that we're putting in here has the impact that I think it does. So that really requires an apples-to-apples comparison that, as far as I know, hasn't been done, and certainly I've not done it. So a natural experiment for me to do next semester, for instance, would be to teach the course at the blackboard. Teach the course in this way. Do it in parallel, give both of those students the final exam, and see what happens. So yes, that is doable. It's not yet been done. But can I just follow up on one thing that came to mind when you were asking a question, which is also, I meant to say an answer to your question. In terms of, does this replace the traditional college education, this sort of stuff? And as you were indicating, I would say that, at least for me, and I think for many people, college was not just the courses, right? College was all the other things, the impromptu conversation over lunch with the faculty member that got me thinking about this kind of project, that got me into some research on free quarks in the sun, nothing to do with the courses that I was taking. It was conversations with the other students late into night. Most of it was useless and silly, but some of it had impact. So all of that is what, for many people, the college experience is about. And of course, this doesn't replace that, but this does have an impact on one component of that, what we do in the classroom.
So I have one more comment about that. So the students would show up at my door anyway, right, because of what you're describing. Now, the second point I guess I wanted to make was this whole idea of, we like to think that we do a lot for the students when they come to see us in class, and we get through to that 1 or 2, like you had mentioned. One of the things that, in Canada, we have, an entire generation of environmental scientists because they used to watch David Suzuki's Nature of Things on the CBC. And I imagine, you as a young man was probably very interested in Carl Sagan, for the same things that we like to do. So it is still there. It's just the community, though, isn't necessarily there.
Right.
Well, what you're talking about is the role model aspect of being a professor, and that's not minor. I think people see you and see you working in a certain way, and they do want to be you.
But the question is, to what extent does that need to be sort of a human face-to-face experience? For instance, you're right, Carl Sagan did have a big impact on me, but I was watching him in a box.
Okay, we have another question in the front here.
So you sort of touched on my question earlier, just now, but I was wondering what the future of in-person education is, and what types of learners and what type of science learning most benefits from that in-person interaction.
Well, I think in-person instruction will be with us until the end of time. That is what every interaction at some level is all about. will the balance of the student's education shift somewhat so that a lot more of it's happening in a digital space as opposed to a live space or not? And I think that will depend in part on who the student is. I think there are some for whom their DNA will be most revved up by having the face-to-face personal interaction. I can tell you, I know students who would prefer to learn online as opposed to the face-to-face because of who they are. So I think part of it will fall out based upon individual preferences. And the power of this sort of experience, though, I think will certainly convince many that at the very least they can supplement their learning in a spectacularly strong way by not just reading the book. This, to me, is better than reading the book. So if nothing else, this is the future of textbooks. That's a very conservative way of describing it.
And can I ask one more? So it's great that you're connected with World Science Festival and that can monetize World Science U, but what are some other ways that MOOCs and similar programs can be monetized?
Well, there are many people who can speak to that with greater expertise than I. I was asked that question by Stephen Colbert when I was on his show, and I said, I don't know. And he said, so you're not only a theoretical physicist, you're a theoretical businessman. And it's absolutely right. So the obvious things that people are doing is try to charge for the certificate of completion, try to charge for enhanced services, try to charge for being able to access some teaching assistant online. You know, there are all sorts of ways which you can imagine people paying for, or at some point maybe this stuff is just not free, right? There's a lot of value, there's a lot of content, there's a lot of expense in creating. Textbooks aren't free, so why should a better textbook be free, right? So I think all of this has to play out, and I don't know the answer to it. I should say, though, World Science Festival was able to monetize the initial seed project. World Science Festival won't be monetizing, will not be providing funding, I should say, for this going forward. So yeah, so we're fundraising, you know, in the philanthropic space.
So we have a couple questions in the back, but while you get the mic there, we have a question from Twitter. Brian, do you have any plans to develop content for younger kids
Yeah,
in the future?
yeah, we do.
So send that back to them. Yes, he does.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
All right. Yeah, so you talked a little bit about the access, the benefits that this provides for access, and I guess you kind of also said that quality is the first focus. So how important to you is the access issue generally?
In terms of like bandwidth issues, or
access for people who wouldn't necessarily have access to this kind of quality education to you as a professor?
Well, it's huge. Yeah, it's huge. I mean, I've received already, you know, as with all of these things, people like to tout big numbers. We got big numbers of people using this right now, and I've gotten a lot of correspondence from people saying, wow, this is spectacular. I never thought I'd be able to engage with this kind of material in this kind of way from all over the world. So yes, that's enormously exciting. And I think that really, to first approximation, is the big shift. Will it shift what happens to the Columbia student? Sort of. It did. My student, you know, a handful of students. Will it shift the person who otherwise wouldn't have any access? That's a big deal.
I think we have another question in the back there.
So I guess kind of building off of his question, I kind of was wondering why you're doing this. So like, is the idea that a lot of people will now know theoretical physics, or like, is there something bigger that happens after that?
Well, I've devoted part of my life to educating people in these areas, and this seems to be the natural next step to do that better, to provide it to a greater number of people, and to open the wonder of science to people who perhaps otherwise would have no understanding, no knowledge, no motivation to study these ideas. So for me, the most exciting thing is when I'll go somewhere to give a talk, and the kid comes up to me and says, I read your book, The Elegant Universe, when I was 15. I just got my PhD in physics, and I went into physics because of that. And honestly, The Elegant Universe sold a lot of copies, made a lot of money, right? Great. But that moment If it didn't sell and it didn't make any money and I still had that moment with that kid, it would have been worth writing the book. So that's why.
So let me ask also a question from the Twitter, Ask Brian Greene. What are your favorite science videos online that aren't from World Science U that maybe, in fact, you've used to help inspire your video?
Oh boy, that's a good question, and I should have a snappy response to that. I don't know. I mean, I've seen a lot of video online. A lot of it feels very underwhelming to me. There are, you know, the ones that have had the greatest impact in the sense that I remember them are not the ones that were science per se, but were more ones that were using science in a highly artistic way and kind of blew me away by virtue of the beauty of the scene that was created. There's a guy, I think it was down in Australia or New Zealand, who spent like months trying to figure out camera angles to see the rising moon with a foreground of little human beings, and he worked out the angles and the various ways of doing it, and it looks like this enormous moon, it's beautiful.
It was creative.
That's breathtaking, and those are the ones that stick with me more than any of the content, you know, the hardcore science content ones.
Maurice, a lot of the stuff on PBS is very good. Nova, I mean, I'm always learning stuff from it, and the same is true from the Nature series. I mean, in terms of basic, simple science, they do it well, and no ads, or at least no ads in the middle of the program.
Do we have any other questions? We have one in the back there.
First, thanks for coming, Brian. So I have a question for you that I'm really trying to think about this format online and the constraints and affordances. In that, have you run into anything or thought about anything that you thought that was science related that you felt was just too difficult to put up online, that you haven't been able to sort of figure out the challenges of making happen? And in the same way, is there anything that you think is just absolutely fantastic to put online that maybe isn't even better than doing face-to-face?
Yeah, well, again, all we have right now in terms of courses are a couple of pilots which are all focused on Einstein and relativity. And as you were saying, I do think that is a better way to grasp the material. But in terms of stuff that'd be too difficult to be on, I don't think so. Everything that we teach in any department, in principle, is something that can have a digital incarnation. The question is, to what extent will the digital space make it better, make it more effective? And again, in some areas where it isn't a highly visual subject, it's not a very interactive subject, maybe there isn't a lot of value in moving over to the digital version. But in most of the physics areas, astronomy, chemistry, biology, I think basically any of those courses can benefit enormously from this kind of treatment.
Before I move to another question in the audience, I have another one from the Twitter feed for the theoretical businessman. Could this model of education lead to a similar funding crisis like the one that has hit the news industry?
In principle, it could, but clearly those holding the reins of power in the educational system are being diligent to try to avoid that from happening.
Well, yes and no, I would say, as somebody observing that part of the world. There are a lot of people in education who are, as mentioned earlier, kind of seeing this kind of instruction as a solution to the economic crisis that exists in education. But I don't think really what's causing costs to spiral are the cost of adjunct professors who do 72% of the teaching in our nation's system. It's something else, and that will not be solved by digitizing instruction. I mean, the University of Phoenix is all digital, and it's not cheap.
Right.
Yeah, I might add another one. So you talked about, you know, like how your class on special relativity this semester went. So was it, I just wanted to hear more about that. Was it kind of like a Q&A session in class, or like what happened during those times? And then I was actually going to take your Quantum for Mathematicians class. That didn't happen, and I was wondering, do you think, that being a higher level class, like, would it have gone a similar way, like being, somewhat, I don't know.
Yeah, so first, sorry about that. That was just some snafu. I had no idea that they had put me down for teaching the quantum course until somebody wrote me and said, what do I need for the course? I'm like, what? I'm not teaching that. But anyway, the class, the first half would be a Q&A, typically. They'd come in with students would come with all sorts of questions, and I'd usually have to cut it off at 1 hour. And then the second hour of the session, I would come in with additional problems that were difficult, typically, too hard to set for any student on their own to try to work on. And I'd break that down to pieces, and I'd have the students work on those problems, typically a little bit on their own and then in groups. And then they'd try to come to a consensus on the answer, and somebody would go to the board and try to solve it, and we'd work it out together, which gave students more of a sense of the working steps necessary to solve a certain class of problems. And moreover, I tried to pick problems that by the end, when you had the solution, it was a little bit mind-blowing. Like, whoa, I can't believe, that sort of experience.
All right, I think we have one more question here.
Yes,
We
hi.
have a couple.
Based on your statement about trying to make this information and knowledge accessible in different places around the world to different people who will not have access otherwise, I'm wondering if you are planning to do translations of these in different language as well.
Yeah, so translation is...
Same question on Twitter, too.
Yeah, good. So translation is within our phase 2, or I don't know if it's phase 3. We have a variety of things that we want to do to enhance the site. Translation being one, but I might also note, I learned things in the classroom which will now inform the digital. So for instance, my fall students, they love the problems and solutions. Again, that's sort of where a lot of the learning takes place. So between the semesters, I filmed an additional 150 problems and solutions, put it into the site. So the spring semester students had all those. Another thing that all the students want is, and it makes perfect sense, they want a written summary of each of the video modules, because if they want to get the equation that I derived, it's hard to scroll through the video. It makes perfect sense. So we're going to have a place where there's a text-based summary that you can easily go through to get the key. So there are a variety of things of that sort that will be rolled into the next phase of it.
All right, we'll take 2 more questions, one here and one here.
Cool. So why did you decide to build your own platform for online courses rather than using something that exists that's already well-funded, like Coursera or Udacity?
Well, we look closely at those platforms, obviously, before going forward, because building your own platform is a non-trivial undertaking. And all those platforms were so constrained in terms of the experience of the student. They're largely platforms that allowed delivery of a video lecture with some ancillary content that's sort of tacked on in one way or another. And to me, that is suboptimal in terms of what the experience could be. So we thought hard, and we worked with a fantastic team of designers to create something that I think is a step in a better direction. That was all there was to it.
So I have a really good follow-up. I almost feel like, as a designer, there should almost be, don't try this at home. That you can't just be a professor, turn on your webcam, you're not going to have, and I think online learning has been so conflated into, this is very different than the production value, I think, really matters.
Right.
And I think that gets lost. It'd be really interesting almost to see behind the scenes how you produce one of these, because I think people would be shocked to see what really goes into producing one episode.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I would love to have some data just to take your 2 questions, put it together, that really shows that there is value in the higher production. I see it, I believe it's the case, but it'd be great to really...
So we did do that. I worked at
Oh, you
Kaplan,
did?
and we
Okay.
did a lot of A/B testing where you would make a change and ran one course.
Yeah, great.
So I think that's
And
a
you
great
show,
thing
and
to
it
do,
showed that it
yes.
was. Well, I'd like to know more about it, but yes. So you're absolutely right. I mean, I've got friends who've taught on the traditional platform like Coursera, and basically sat in front of the laptop and spoken to the webcam, and it's a fine way to deliver content. But yes, this was...
But I don't think you're going to get the type of reusable assets that
Right,
we're sort of...
I agree with you completely, and you're right. So this was a big undertaking, and the behind the scenes we do have some, and some of it's a little bit, the problems and solutions we shot in my living room. Our living room turned into a
all
studio.
of the work that goes into sort
Yeah.
of scripting it, I think.
Oh, yeah.
is lost
No.
in the
I mean,
process.
this took over all aspects of our life, primarily because we did not build, in answer to some earlier question, we did not build the architecture of a startup business, which is what one would normally do if one was doing this in their space. We just put it together in a very lean, tight, relatively inexpensive way, which meant that it looks really good, but it's held together by a lot of duct tape. But that's fine. You know, it's all a matter of the end product.
So in closing, The Elegant Universe, teaching at Columbia, the World Science Festival, you wrote a play, you've started a MOOC. What's next?
Sleep. You know, honestly, the primary thing, and this is going to sound cheesy and silly, but I have 2 young kids, and that's like the #1 focus for me now. And if I can find the energy to do that as well as I can and do something else, then great. If not, so what?
Well, let's bring this to a close, and I want to thank Brian for doing the session, and Claudia for joining us and helping with the interview. I want to see if we can give a round of applause to both of them. Thank you very much. Again, thank you very much for coming.
Well, thank you. Great question.